Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2001 crime drama Blow. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this film, I want to give a special shout out to Shine for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you'd like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to my PayPal or to my Patreon. The link to both is in the video description down below. And I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, Blow is honestly a film that I think is quite underrated. It got some decent reviews when it came out. It did solid box office. It wasn't spectacular in terms of its box office, but it did make a profit. But it's a film that's kind of fallen in between the cracks when it comes to a crime drama. It does have its fans, but you don't really see it put on the same pedestal or put in the same place or the same tier as some of these other films like it. And I also feel it's unfairly maligned by some people for it being some kind of Goodfellas ripoff. I never really got that vibe at all while watching this movie. And it's not like Goodfellas created the genre of a crime drama that starts with a flashback. That's giving Goodfellas way too much credit. And it's a phenomenal film, and I think Goodfellas in many ways is a better movie than Blow, but I don't really think Blow is some wannabe Goodfellas. At least not to me personally. I think there's enough differences in terms of the way the story plays out, the way that things are set up with the characters, and with the style and the direction and the approach to the violence or to the subject matter that makes it its own thing. I don't really feel that Blow is just cocaine Goodfellas. I think that's just not. I don't think that's accurate. The film is directed by Ted Demme, and sadly, this was one of the last films that he directed before he passed away. Of ironically enough, complications due to Blow, due to cocaine, which I find to be insane. I looked that up and I'm like, wow. So the guy who did Blow, he died of a heart attack due to doing Blow. Like that's just that's crazy. But may he rest in peace. And it's really sad because you could see with this film he was starting to really hone his craft. He was really starting to reach another level as a filmmaker, and you never really saw him continue on that path because of ultimately what did him in. Now, the direction though in this is dynamic, it's slick, it's stylish, it's amazing. I think this film features some really strong, really great direction and some really cool and unique shots. One in particular that really stands out to me is honestly one of my favorite shots in this film, and in any film in this particular genre or just in general, because I just love the way that Demi shot this scene. It's a sequence that takes place like a little over an hour and a half in, where it's the start of George's downfall, and the way that the scene is directed is so damn cool. So what he does, Demi, in this scene is he uses the camera to provide a hint to the audience that things are going to go sideways. And so how he does that is it looks like it's just a traditional, just kind of average, run of the mill scene in the film where George is going to go up to an apartment and set up a deal for some drugs. But the camera, as soon as he gets out of the car and he's going up to the apartment complex, the camera slowly, deliberately starts to go sideways. I thought that was just so brilliant. Just some really great direction in that scene. And the film features a lot of sequences that have some clever angles or some nice perspectives or some unique techniques that are used. And overall, it's just a great looking movie. And I think in large part, a lot of the film's success is due to Ted because it was a passion project of his. He went as far as anyone could possibly go as a director in terms of doing research and putting their boots on the ground and really trying to find a way to put themselves in the mindset of the focus of their film. He went and visited the real George Jung and interviewed him, and he went the whole 9 yards, and he went above and beyond in terms of his preparation for this film. And I think it absolutely paid off. It's just a damn shame that he never really got another opportunity to direct another film like this before he uh, passed away. He worked on a documentary called A Decade Under the Influence, which was about 70s cinema, and that was a really solid film as well. But that's a documentary, that's a different kind of movie. After this, he was no longer around, so he wasn't able to do a follow up. I would have loved to have seen another crime drama from Ted Demme. The film was written by David McKenna and Nick Cassavetes. It's based on Blow by Bruce Porter. And like a lot of based on a true story films, it does take a lot of creative liberties in order to create a consistently compelling narrative. I've never read the book, so I can't really say for sure whether or not the book is better. But honestly, I think this is a really uh, good script for the most part. I think the way that it sets up the flashbacks, the way that it structures the plot in terms of how it unfolds, I think it's definitely something that is compelling in its own way, just because of how things are set up and structured. From the opening of the movie, which starts out at the point where George is about to get busted for the final time. And then you get flashbacks to him when he was younger and when he was a kid. And you get to see why George is so obsessed with having money and he's not okay with just enough to get by because of what happened to him when he was a kid, what happened when his father and his mother had some hard times, and that really did leave a mark on him that he carried with him all the way to adulthood. The script does a good job making you understand George's motivations, making you get why he's continually doing these drug deals and is continually pushing the envelope, and why he's okay with being a criminal in terms of that's how he's able to make all this money. That's how he's able to be happy. At least in his mind, that's how he's happy. But of course, he realizes once he's in prison for the rest of his life, for the most part, he realizes pretty quickly that that's not what true happiness is. But at that point, it's too late. And I like that the script, it doesn't sugarcoat that. This film has been accused by critics of making George Jung into an overly sympathetic figure. I don't really feel that that's the case. It's sad, but I don't think it really does anything that really makes it seem like George didn't do all of this himself. That George's actions were what ultimately cost him everything. It doesn't try to set up a scenario where other parties are to blame for his empire collapsing and for him winding up in jail. I think that there is a certain sympathy because of what he's dealt with. I mean, he had the first love of his life die because of a tragic illness. He got in a relationship with this woman that he thought really loved him, but in reality, she just loved his blow. She loved the drugs. She loved the money. She didn't necessarily love him on the same level. They had a kid, and he really wants to get clean, and he really wants to make a difference in her life, and he really wants to be with her, but he has this warped sense of what he should do to be able to uh to make her a consistent part of his life, which is make one more drug deal, make all this money, and then have her go with him, and they'll live on the lam, and he just doesn't understand. He doesn't understand how to make a living, how to make money any other way other than selling drugs. He has this warped ideology of what uh uh life should be and what a working man should do. And in his mind, work is selling more drugs because he'd been doing it for so long. And he had developed a, I wouldn't say lack of conscience, but he definitely developed, uh, let's just say, a personality where selling drugs didn't seem like it was bad or even illegal to him. The consequences of him being caught or the consequences of his actions didn't really seem like they were at the forefront for George. And I know there are some things that were changed in terms of when he was first turned in, when he went on the lam after he got busted with marijuana. I think it was, yeah, after he, it wasn't marijuana. No, I think, yeah, it was. He got busted with marijuana. He went on the lam. He avoided parole, avoided sentencing. He went on the run. He went to visit his parents, and in the film, his mother turns him in, but in reality, that never happened. I'm okay with that change happening for this version of his story. It does. It makes it more compelling to think that his own mother would turn him in. Because a lot of times when it comes to these kind of scenarios, the parent tends to not do that, surprisingly enough, even though their kid is doing something that's illegal. They're breaking the law. And speaking of parent dynamic, I think the dynamic between George and his father was really uh great. I thought it was some really strong stuff in terms of the way that their dynamic was written. I like that you would have scenes with his father where his father would be like, "You know what? I know what you're doing, but as long as you're happy, I'm okay with it." But the more that he kept doing it, the more chances that he had to get clean and to rehabilitate himself and to move completely away from this way of life. And he didn't take advantage of those chances. It really hurt his father. And when his father became really ill and he was not long for this world, because of how unreliable he was, because of the fact that he was so wrapped up in the drug life and selling drugs and being a drug kingpin, he lost sight of what was really important in his life. And he wasn't able to be there when his father had his last moments. He had to essentially speak to a tape recorder to say goodbye to his own father. Like, that's some really just intense, just emotionally devastating stuff. And the way that the screenplay handles it is really good. Like the screenwriters nail it. And speaking of like the emotionally intense stuff, the stuff with George and his daughter, and how he breaks her heart, and how that ties into the end of the film where he's in prison and he imagines a happy ending where he's able to see his daughter all grown up and she still loves him, but it's imaginary. It's all in his head, because then the rug is pulled out from underneath him and the audience, and you see the realization that he's just a sad, lonely old man in prison who is waiting for his daughter to visit him, who will never come, who will never be there, who will never visit him, because she doesn't want anything to do with him for good reason, because she doesn't trust him anymore, because he broke her heart and broke her trust. That's some really hard hitting stuff. And I appreciate the script. Yeah, it doesn't shy away from that. And I like that the screenplay has some lighter moments, like in the beginning when he's selling the pot on the beach and meeting the girl that he would ultimately fall for, meeting Derek for real, and all of that. And then you get some realism that's thrown in there. You get some stuff that breaks up their fantasy. And that happens quite often throughout this script. I think it's a really good balance where you'll have some stuff where, oh, it's craziness. He's at a peak in terms of his drug dealing, and his empire. Then it falls, and then he builds it back up again. But this time it's bigger than ever, because instead of it being marijuana, now it's cocaine, and cocaine is now becoming this massively popular drug throughout Hollywood and throughout the rest of the United States, and all over the world. And he and his partner are like one of the biggest suppliers of it, and they're in bed with, and they have connections with Pablo Escobar. And you're like, okay, this is the glory years, the glory days. He has a mansion, and he's got this hot Cuban wife now, and they have a kid, and everything seems like it's perfect. And speaking of perfect, there is a conscious decision by the writers to have multiple moments throughout the movie where George will say that everything is perfect. Everything is where he wants it to be. And then as soon as he says that, everything falls to shit. Everything just completely craters. And he's thrown back down, uh, and faced to deal with reality. And to really truthfully realize the statement that his father made about money not being a real thing, being something that really hits home to him, because of the fact that he just made so much money and was able to build this empire so quickly, and it was so successful, that for him money didn't mean anything. It was just something that he had access to, and he had a lot of it. He had so much that he didn't even really think about it until he lost it all. So yeah, I think this is a great script when it comes to showing the rise and fall of a drug kingpin, because it doesn't necessarily paint George as somebody who is without flaws. Like he definitely does have flaws. The man, he had a drug problem. It was so bad that he collapsed of honestly, it was a cocaine overdose. He collapsed of a cocaine overdose during the birth of his daughter at the hospital. And he had other issues, I think, that honestly stemmed from his childhood. And he also was too naive. He was too quick and willing to trust people, even when he shouldn't have, because he had this vision in his mind that, okay, I got these connections, I got the money, I got the power, I got the influence. I did my part to help my confidant. I've worked with him long enough that I can trust him. So I'll give him my contact. I'll give him Derek for Real's number, and then of course, he gets screwed over. He gets screwed over by Diego, a man who he thought was his friend, a man who he thought he could trust, because he made a massive mistake when it comes to this particular line of work. You're doing drugs, you're a drug kingpin, or you're a gangster. You don't trust anybody. You trust nobody. You trust no one, because somebody that you've known for years could always come over and stab you in the back, cut you out, and fuck you over. And that's exactly what happened. A lot of ways the way that George is portrayed in the script is that he's a naive kid. Like, he never grew up. And if you think about it, he never really had a reason to grow up, because he was just having a free ride. He was selling the drugs, selling the pot at the beach, and making all this money, and paying off the mortgage on the house, and having money on the side, and having all the women and the drugs and the booze that he wanted. And then he starts a cocaine empire with Diego, and then he has even more access and ability to just own every car and own any mansion and just have just ungodly amounts of money. And he was just able to party. He was able just to have an endless party for most of his life until it all caught up to him and the party was over. And now he has nobody. He didn't even have his parents. His mother wants nothing to do with him. His father died without seeing his son one last time, only heard his words. And his ex-wife cut him out. His daughter is done with him. He's got nothing. It's over. And yeah, that's something that really hits hard. It really does. And I think the script did a great job doing that. Like, yeah, there's some fun to be had when it comes to the partying and the excess and everything. But when this script needs to buckle down and really show you the harsh reality of what happens when it all crumbles, when it all falls apart, and you're left with just life in prison and a bunch of bars to stare through and visits with no one except the ghosts in your mind. Uh, yeah, the script is some really strong, powerful stuff. And I don't think it gets enough credit for that in terms of how effective it is when it comes to showcasing those elements of the life of a drug kingpin. The cast is also phenomenal. Really terrific cast, headed by Johnny Depp as George Jung. And honestly, I think this is one of his best performances of his entire career. I think it features some of his best acting, especially when he's older and he's got a paunch and a belly and he's starting to show his age. Uh, I think that Johnny had a difficult role to pull off because he had to play, the young, brash, cocky George when he's selling all the weed and talking in court and acting like he's not doing anything that's really that damaging or destructive or that bad. All I'm doing is selling some drugs. There are other people who do things way worse than I do. Just being completely oblivious to the impact that he has on other people's lives. And not realizing that this free ride that he has is not unlimited, that it can end at any time. And I think that Johnny Depp just balanced both parts of that character so well. The the cocky young kid as well as the older man who really, once he has his daughter, he honestly deep down just wants to be a father, but he doesn't know any other way of making a living other than selling drugs. And he's so used to a particular way of living that he can't go back, or he can't do anything else in his mind. He can't get a job that is like 9 to 5 and doesn't involve selling drugs. Like that never comes to his mind. He thinks he doesn't feel that he's capable of that. And so when you have the moment when he gets busted for that final time on the day where he thinks everything's going to turn out and be everything that he ever wanted it to be, and he was going to sell the drug, do one last drug deal, and then he was going to live off of that for the rest of his life and live happily ever after with his daughter, and they're going to go to California. No, that's not going to happen. So yeah, Johnny Depp was just great in this. It's a very strong performance by Johnny Depp. Penelope Cruz was also fine as well as Mirtha Jung. She wasn't in the film a lot. She doesn't really show up, I think, until like almost an hour in or a little over an hour in. When she shows up, she definitely makes an impact. Uh, Powder keg. That's really a good way to sum up her performance. Just a powder keg performance where she's sizzling up the screen with her sex appeal, but then she's also just able to send sparks in a different way in terms of just the dynamic of her character, the unfiltered nature of this character, where it seems like it is rather genuine, at least it appears that way, that she really loves George. She wants to be a good mother, but then, she's also addicted to blow. And that's definitely something that creates a rift in the relationship and causes problems for her and for George, and ultimately it causes him to get busted because she is just not ready to just live a regular lifestyle. And so she crashes and burns and takes George along with her. Franka Potente is Barbara. Uh, she she was also decent, not the best actress, but she wasn't in the film a lot, so I felt it still worked, especially when it comes to the scenes between her and Johnny Depp. I felt that they had some good chemistry. Rachel Griffiths as I think that's George's mom. She was there. I think honestly, I think a lot of ways it was kind of just the fact that this character was very one note. But because of that, it felt like there were some scenes where her animosity towards George felt a little forced. Paul Rubens, though, was anything but forced here as Derek for real. Uh, just charismatic as ever as this flamboyant drug dealer. And it's honestly some of his best work as an actor. He really dove into that role to the point where you didn't even really see Paul Rubens anymore. You saw this character. You saw Derek for real. It didn't seem like he was playing this guy. It seemed like he was playing him for real. It's a very genuine and authentic performance. Jordi Molla as Diego. I honestly feel that was a pretty solid performance. Not spectacular because there's a couple moments where his line delivery is a bit off, and I don't think he was intimidating at all when the film was trying to make him intimidating, but it was still a good performance overall. Cliff Curtis is Pablo Escobar. Speaking of not intimidating, miscast. I do not buy Cliff Curtis as Pablo Escobar. I mean, it just is not a casting choice that I felt really worked. This is a guy who, I mean, he was in Deep Rising before this. He was in Once Were Warriors. He was in Three Kings. After this, he was in films like Collateral Damage. You know, he was in Live Free or Die Hard. He was in The Meg. He was in Avatar: The Way of Water. You know, he's been in a bunch of stuff. Like he was in Hobbs and Shaw, and like it just, I don't see this guy as Pablo Escobar. I just don't really feel that he had the menace that that character needed. It felt like he was just cosplaying as Pablo Escobar instead of actually being Pablo Escobar. Um, Ray Liotta, man, he was awesome in this as George's father. Honestly, some of his best acting as well, because he's not playing a gangster here. He's not playing the bad guy. He's playing just a regular, just a dad who wants the best for his son and doesn't necessarily agree with what he's doing, but you know, he still loves his son. And the scene where he's listening to George's final words to him, so tragic. So unbelievably tragic. And it's just such a real and raw scene. And it's a scene that just works so brilliantly and so well because of what Ray brought to that performance and to that character. Now, you also have some other actors like Ethan Suplee, who plays Tuna in the film, uh, who's a friend and a fellow colleague of George's. You've got Bobcat Goldthwait, who's in this for like a blink and you miss it role as Mr. T. Emma Roberts, I think this was her acting debut as Christina, uh, George's daughter. Some good acting on her part too, especially for a very early role in her career. But yeah, for the most part, great cast. And features some nice looking cinematography that really matches the era of the film, or the eras, the 70s and the 80s. Uh Matches the aesthetic that the director is trying to go for as well. The editing by Kevin Tent I thought was really good. Um, had some nice moments in it where it almost felt like it was fueled by cocaine. You know, it blew by really well in terms of how one scene uh, went to the next. And some good music by Graham Revell. Not what I would consider to be one of his most memorable scores, but it works for uh, the intentions that the filmmakers and everybody involved with the movie had for the score in terms of what it was supposed to represent and what it was supposed to bring to the movie. It's a film where there's not a ton of original compositions, though, when it comes to the score. There's bits and pieces. A lot of the music, though, seems to be just songs that were picked for the soundtrack to really evoke a certain vibe. Uh, and I think the songs are really good selections overall. And yeah, I think this is a gem. I thought this was really good. I mean, it's like 2 hours. It's not too long either. I think it had some good pacing to it as well. Um, yeah, I would definitely recommend this one if you haven't seen it yet. And I agree with Peter Travers. It's a smart, sexy, dangerous drama that to me should be ranked pretty high when it comes to crime dramas, especially about the life of a drug kingpin or the rise and the fall. It's not as over the top as some of the other films in this genre. Like, it's not as over the top as Scarface. So I think maybe some people might have been expecting that from the movie, but that's not really what Blow is. So, and I think I like the fact that it's not as over the top as Scarface. It helps it stand out as its own film, and makes it so it doesn't seem like it's just a tired retread of something that's already been done in the genre. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Blow. And as always, thanks for watching. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.